What's up, YouTube? So this is my end of 2021 list. I've got a few things going on here. I got a new camera, and in the background I'm playing off of a new CD player. Just as a side note, before we jump into the 2021 stuff, I don't know if anyone's interested in me talking about like what I'm using for all the records and CDs that I'm going to be talking about, but if you're interested in the future in me kind of talking about the different pieces of hi-fi that I use, because that's very much elementary for me. So, but it's also going to be part of my like musical journey. Anyway, so I thought about doing one of these. Let's turn it up here. I thought about doing one of these end of year deals, and I was part of a stream that Rick put on, and a few of us jumped in there. We kind of talked about our favorite releases from 2021. Rick from the Dreadful Minutes, but I'll link to that below because I'm not really going to go over my top 10 per se. I kind of talked about that already, and in the background here you can see 5 records selected. So we've got Skepticisms, Companion, Aetherix, Apotheosis, Midnight Odyssey with Biolume Volume 2, and after that Mystic Storm, The Ancient Ones, I believe is the title. It's in Russian. And after the last over there is the Stargazer with Psychic Secretion. So those are top 5. No necessary, like it's not like a necessarily any order. But what I wanted to talk about here for this end of year sort of deal are just some records. I don't know if you even want to call them honorable mentions, but ones that I have not seen a whole lot of conversation throughout the year in regards to, and I kind of want to just highlight in passing and say like either these are new projects or young bands, or they're and like some of the ones that we'll be talking about are new projects from members of other bands who are doing something different. To draw attention to some releases, since I don't really do collection updates, there's tons of stuff that I'm listening to over the course of the year that never see the light of YouTube. So this is kind of the opportunity for me to talk about them. And at this point, I've kind of cycled through a lot of the end of year lists, and hopefully these are new to you. Let's jump into it. So in the background here, I'm going to grab it. This is a Funeral Storm with Arcane Mysteries, I think 2019. Anyway, that'll be playing in the background for us. So now this next record, I did see Pat over at the Ground Zero Salem. He just talked about it. So while I think this year's record from Enforced grabbed a whole lot of attention, Dead Heat with World at War. This came out on Triple B Records, and it's amazing crossover. But I definitely think it leans a little bit more like relative to the Enforced record, which had elements of death metal going for it. This seems a bit more true to, like, you know, Pat mentioned, you know, The Accused, which I think is a great sort of comparison here in terms of where major influences are coming from. But this is on Triple B, and that should be some sign that it's not going for a lot of the same sort of like metal leaning. You know, bands like Enforced or Power Trip before them, they're on, you know, Enforced has moved to Century Media, and Power Trip is on Southern Lord. You know, Triple B out of the Northeast, I believe out of Boston, New York. This is like a bit much more of a punk label, and they sound the part. But tremendous crossover record this year, and you know, you get the whole album artwork. You know, definitely also looks like the '80s part. But I mean, songs like the title track "World at War," "Age of DH," which I think is, you know, just dead heat, comes in with like this crowd like live chanting "Dead Heat, Dead Heat." I love that track. "Pay the Toll," the closer here. Really cool crossover, and I just didn't see this one. This came out in like June, and probably because most of the YouTube community that I spend time around or pay attention to don't really listen to a lot of punk necessarily. This one did not get as much attention as that Enforced record, but if you wanted something a little bit more on the punk side of crossover, this Dead Heat record will definitely do it for you. Okay, next one. So this is a brand new band out of Sweden, Viral, self-titled release, and this is an independent release. So this is a YouTube discovery for me, and they play a style of traditional heavy metal that, you know, I saw people comparing them, like in the YouTube comments, to your like new wave of traditional heavy metal sort of heavy hitters like, you know, Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. But what this sounds like to me, the vocals have a little bit more of a gruff delivery to it, and it reminds me, like, I think when people talk about the new wave of traditional heavy metal, new wave of British heavy metal, they think of like the giant stadium filling bands that, you know, the likes of Judas Priest and Maiden turned into later in the 80s. They don't really like associate those acts with like a smaller venue, a kind of like bar, you know, I guess it's just a less glamorous setting. And this band seems to like highlight, you know, what you were getting out of those records, like from Diamond Head and Saxon, or even like the pre-Dickinson, like Di'Anno era of Maiden, was like a rougher sound. Like they were coming from a very different kind of live setting, and it would cut their teeth, and not in arenas, like in much smaller, rougher venues. And this walks that line for me of like being a bit more working class in tenor. It doesn't sound like it's a band that is anywhere, you know, near, you know, stadium caliber presentation. It feels a little bit more like in your face and aggressive, and on that line, right, like not quite thrash. I don't know, a few people in the comments were talking about Megadeth, and I don't know where they got that. But it's like that, on that leaning side of the new wave of British heavy metal, where it's like not quite thrash here yet, but I don't know, like maybe Overkill or Metal Church would be like good examples. Early Flotsam and Jetsam were like, what do we do with this genre? At their most aggressive or heaviest and fastest moments, Viral resembles that. But I think more or less they're still a little bit earlier. You know, for me they sound like 81 to 80, like 79, like really before thrash arrives and that like heavy palm muted sort of mid-paced weight is introduced. But as being an independent release, not getting a whole lot of coverage, this Viral record, I guess I'll bring it out and it's all in black, so nothing too special. But I reached out to the band, and they were taking pre-orders for it earlier in the year, and I put my money down and said, if I get a chance to get this on vinyl, being a very limited press as a independent release, put me down for it. And sure enough, they made it happen, and all the success to them. If you're a fan of what do I want to say here? If Enforcer, I think that's right. Enforcer has got a little bit too clean for you, a little bit too pretty, and you want something a little bit more bare-knuckled than the Ambush release. Viral is a good place to look. I don't know how available this will be, but if you get a chance to grab it, I think it's still on Bandcamp in terms of a digital release, and they may have CDs available. But a cool find for me this year, and out of a lot of the traditional heavy metal records that I spun in 2021, one of my favorites. So I'll definitely give them some love there. Moving on. This is Misotheist. I believe For the Glory of Your Redeemer. It's cool little packaging here put together. This is black metal out of Norway, and I think they're from Trondheim. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but cool stuff on the inside here. So Misotheist, this came around, I want to say January, February, so very early in 21. And they play a style of black metal that is interesting. So like the other Trondheim band that put out an album this past year was Whoredom Rife, and they sound much more in like the traditional Scandinavian black metal vein, right? I really had much time to spend with that record, so I haven't purchased it, or I haven't even streamed it or anything like that. But so this Whoredom Rife, or that Whoredom Rife record though, sounds very different than Misotheist. This is like that intersection that like some of the Icelandic bands, Svarti. Oh man, I'll get the record here. Hold on a second. Here we go. So I'm back. So this Misotheist record reminds me a lot of this Svartidaudi record. It's an Icelandic black metal band, but it's like where Deathspell Omega and Ulcerate are on, kind of that interesting like intersection of their riffing style, right? Almost comes in waves, right? It doesn't have the kind of precision to it. It kind of ebbs and flows in a way that is modern, as opposed to like dark metal, right? It doesn't sound like Eternus or Bethlehem. It sounds modern in its aesthetic. But I really liked this Svartidaudi record, and this is from this is called Revelations of the Red Sword. It was released on Van Records in 2018, I believe. And anyway, that's the first band that I think of when I listen to Misotheist. Now there are just 3 tracks. So side A is Rope and Hammer and Benefactor of Wounds, and side B, Acts of Flesh. It's like a long song, but what's cool about this record to me is like it's a great pairing with the Whoredom Rife record, like, or at least in terms of its sound, right? Like if you're familiar with Hordern, right? They're much more in that like traditional Scandinavian, and this sounds much more like a modern take on black metal. Now, whether you thought it is a disqualifying factor or not for you, you know, that's all good if it's not your thing. If you like more traditional black metal, like that new modern stuff isn't your jam, that's all good. But I definitely have an appetite, you know, to some degree on an annual basis for it, and this crossed that off my list. This was like that. I don't want to say avant-garde, but like an intersection that was purely black metal, but had sort of like a weight and modern death metal influence. So, I think in 2019, Drastis kind of did that for me, and in 2020, Ars Magna Umbrae, who have a new record. I have that on the way whenever it gets here, but it's that style of black metal. So I do love having just the 3 tracks here, right? As complex and as dense as that style can get, just, you know, being able to isolate it in those 3 sort of pieces really focused my attention and made this far more manageable to listen. So that's Mystotheist with For the Glory of Your Redeemer. Alright. So I'm going to do this in 2 shots. Last one here is Siderian. Man, what do you want to say? Like, okay, so you see that Stargazer record sitting up there behind me. Siderian is a good sort of another example of that style of death metal. Though I think this is comfortably more death metal. I would even go so far to say that this is like a mix of death and thrash. If I were to have like a spectrum here, I'll do it. Let me go grab it. I'll grab some more records, right? Okay. So if you had Cryptosis with Bionic Swarm and Ghastly with Mercurial Passages, to me, this... Can I do it? Can I pull this off? Here we go. Here's your sort of trajectory, or how awkward can I be? This is your sort of transition from thrash to death metal, right? For me, Siderian kind of sat in the middle there, and they play like, yes, to say it's like a cosmic death metal, that's fair, right? Like, there's definitely something here in terms of like interstellar adventure death metal, right? But I don't want to say it becomes like purely a sci-fi experience, right? It's probably closer to that Stargazer in terms of like the depth that it's exploring, which I really do appreciate. The riffing style, though, is interesting. Like, I don't want to say it's like progressive would be wrong, and to say it's technical, I don't think would be correct either, right? So I think we may associate a lot of those, like, you think progressive, and the aesthetic is like impressionist, right? It's Van Gogh and Monet. Like, those are examples of when I think progressive, like, that's the aesthetic that I'm thinking of, right? It's like there's a certain kind of smearing or coloration that you hear with that sound, right? The emotional template is a little bit different, and that's why the kind of language that we use to describe progressive music, or progressive death metal for that matter, is a bit different than the technical side, right? I know we're sort of splitting hairs here, but like technical, it's like MC Escher or Cubism, right? There's something about like the precision to the language, which is why when we talk about technical music, it's like we use Angular as a reference to describe a riff structure or a melodic sensibility, and that's definitely on this Siderian record. It's a little bit more on that, like the language I was used to describe their riff structure and their sound, their melodic components. It's sharp and cuts. It exists in these very well-defined lines that intersect one another. It doesn't smear, right? The paint doesn't run in to the next sort of color on the pattern, or on the brush stroke, if you will. And that kind of cleanliness, leads me to describe them as a bit more technical. But I don't want to get the impression like that it's anything like Defeated Sanity, for example. It's probably, it operates in some interesting middle grounds, which makes the adventure of listening to this record really interesting. So they used to be known as Teleport, and they're from Slovenia. So this is sort of under a new banner, new moniker, but a lot of the same sound. Now this also was on, I should pull out and show all the artwork. Here are the guys hanging out in Slovenia. On Edge Circle Productions. I want to say thank you. I had quite the adventure with Edge Circle after the whole Demoniac affair, but it has all been, it's all been sort of worked out, and it's all good, and I have no problem ordering from them in the future. This came, like there were a lot of things that were delayed, but this was like a couple of months as opposed to like 9 for the Demoniac record. But I didn't hear this one talked about a lot, and I don't know if it's because it's like not on 20 Buck Spin or Dark Descent. But for people who love, that progressive death metal, that as I described it, and if you dug the Ghastly record but wanted something a little bit thrashier, or liked the Cryptosis record but wanted something a bit heavier, this is a good sort of spot to look. So that's Siderian with Lost on Void's Horizon. So we're going to see how this went. I've got a new camera which has a new microphone, and I've got this all set up. Once again, if you want to check out, a group of YouTubers talking about their favorite 2021 releases, here are 5: The Stargazer, Mystic Storm, Midnight Odyssey, Aetheric, and Skepticism. All their new records from 2021 are sitting behind me. We got some doom metal, some black metal, more black metal, a traditional heavy metal, and some death metal, if you want to call it that. But I'm going to do another part 2 here for you and talk about some other records that and I'll also put up my other top 5. So you'll get my top 10 here, and then some honorable mentions or just interesting points of discussion records. And then after that, I think, I'm loving this new CD player that I picked up. So I am probably going to do a CD series, because I've really just talked about vinyl for the most part this year. And I'll probably spend, I don't know, I've got a Doom project that I previously mentioned in the works, that I will probably, I think most of the records are at this point in, but I'll spend some time listening to that. But I probably will. But what I'm trying to say is I probably will spend the next couple of months just talking about 2021, because there's still stuff coming in, and I haven't done a lot of collection updates. It's been a year, and I was looking back since I first started this channel, and I basically introduced myself to to the world of YouTube, talking about the previous year and kind of taking my time with those records. So I may make that a tradition, but either way, this will be part 1. There'll be part 2 coming here soon enough for you. Anyway, see you guys soon. Bye.